When I pulled onto my land after being gone for a year, I expected the same quiet 8 acres I'd always known. Instead, the first thing I heard was laughter, kids running around, echoing from a massive house that wasn't supposed to exist. For a second, I honestly thought I'd turned onto the wrong property. Then I looked up, and my stomach dropped. An entire row of brand new mansions stretched across my fields. Fresh paint. Perfect lawns. Families relaxing on porches like they owned the place. One guy even waved at me, like I was the stranger trespassing on his land. And right in front of all of them was a shiny new HOA sign, planted deep into the soil I had paid for, lived on, and worked myself. That's when the shock turned into something else, a cold, heavy feeling in my chest, like someone had erased me while I was gone. I'd only been away for a year. So how did an entire neighborhood appear without a single notice? Who approved this? Who gave permission? I didn't know the answers yet. But whoever did this was about to find out I wasn't the kind of person who just lets things slide. But let me start at the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. I bought these 8 acres years ago because they were quiet, open, and completely mine. No neighbors staring over a fence, no rulebook pinned to my front door, just space to breathe. Over time, the area around me grew. Houses popped up, roads expanded, and eventually an HOA formed down the road. My land was outside their boundary. And they never let me forget how much that bothered them. Every time I crossed paths with one of their board members, they'd make the same little comments, the kind you pretend to laugh off but remember later. 8 acres all to yourself? Must be hard keeping it productive. Or, the community could really benefit if you sold before we start developing this way. They called it advice. It always sounded like a warning. Then came the letters. At first they were polite, invitations to join their HOA. Then they became frequent. Then persistent. Then pushy. I never responded. My land wasn't part of their jurisdiction, and it never would be. I wasn't signing away control of the one place that actually felt like mine. At least, that's what I believed. Until I came back after a year and realized the HOA hadn't been asking. They'd been planning. The moment I confronted the HOA, their story poured out like a rehearsed script. According to them, I had abandoned my land, and that gave them the right to do whatever they wanted, mansions, roads, landscaping, all of it theirs to control. They claimed they followed every rule, every procedure, and that I had no claim anymore. I asked to see the paperwork. Permits. Anything. But there was nothing. No documents. No approvals. Not a single shred that could stand up in court. Every answer felt like a brush off, and the more I pressed, the more their confident tone cracked. By the end, they looked nervous, almost guilty, like they were hiding something. And I kept asking myself, over and over, how did they build all of this without me noticing? Who signed off? And why wasn't I told a thing? A cold weight settled in my chest. I realized then that this wasn't just an HOA dispute, it was a full-on land grab, and I was standing right in the middle of it. Something had to give, and I was about to find out exactly how far they were willing to go. I couldn't let it go. I started digging, county offices, old property records, zoning logs, anything that might explain how a row of mansions appeared on my land overnight. And what I found made my blood run cold. Permits had been forged. Zoning changes pushed through with fake signatures. My land was even listed once as abandoned, like I had vanished off the face of the earth. And behind it all, HOA leaders were quietly cutting deals with developers, pocketing money while pretending everything was legitimate. The second they realized I was uncovering the truth, everything changed. Meetings that used to be polite suddenly turned sharp. Phone calls came with veiled threats instead of answers. At one point, a board member cornered me with documents they wanted me to sign, papers that would retroactively hand them partial ownership of my property. That was the moment I knew I wasn't dealing with rule enforcers, I was dealing with people who were willing to break the law to protect their scheme. And the more questions I asked, the more desperate they became. They thought intimidation would scare me off. But they had no idea how far I was willing to go to take back what was mine. I knew I needed backup, so I brought in lawyers, surveyors, and county officials. Together, we walked every inch of the property, checked every boundary, and combed through every document. Piece by piece, the truth came out. Every signature the HOA showed. Forged. Every permit. Invalid. Not a single mansion had been legally built on my land. When the surveyor confirmed it, the homeowners who had thought they were safe went pale. One nearly dropped his clipboard. The HOA board's smug confidence crumbled too, wide smiles replaced by nervous glances, stammered excuses, and frozen hands. For years, they'd acted like they owned my land. Now, it was crystal clear, I still did. The law was firmly on my side. Suddenly, all their schemes, all the threats, all the secret deals, backfired. The tables had turned. And the people who tried to take advantage of me were the ones facing the consequences. I couldn't help but smile. Finally, justice had a face, mine. I didn't want this to be about kicking innocent homeowners out, most of them had no idea they were part of someone else's scheme. Instead, I used the leverage to make things right. The developers faced huge penalties for all the illegal construction. The HOA lost any control they thought they had over my property, and their board was stripped of every ounce of power. And then came the biggest win, every homeowner living on my land had to start paying rent directly to me. What had been stolen, misused, or taken for granted was now mine, fully, legally, and in plain sight. Finally, the neighborhood made sense again. Rules actually mattered, and my land was respected. Everything that had been built without permission now worked in my favor. The people who thought they could take advantage of me learned a hard lesson, I wasn't someone to mess with. And as I walked through my land, seeing the order restored, I couldn't help but grin. This was justice, mine, exactly as it should be. Once everything was settled, I finally felt the peace I'd been missing. My land, my property, my rules, all of it was back under my control. The mansions that had once felt like a nightmare were now a steady income stream, with rent arriving from homeowners who had unknowingly been living on my land. Every payment was a reminder that justice had been served. The people who tried to take advantage of me had ended up paying me instead. But it wasn't just about money. It was the feeling of control restored, of fairness, of being seen and respected at last. For the first time in years, I could walk through my property without worry, without anger, without fear. The chaos was gone. The land was mine again. And finally, I could just enjoy it.